Warning: Please note that this podcast contains strong language and touches on many topics that may not be considered appropriate for a work environment. If you choose to listen to this podcast where you can be overheard, we are not responsible for the consequences of your decision. You've been warned.
Spoilers, people! We're gonna have a pretty queer show today.
I mean, we'd like to have as queer a show as possible every day, but it's Pride Month still, so super gay. Actually, today we have an exciting show planned for you. We have more than one guest. And
We're gonna have chaos.
Mass chaos. Lots of people yelling fuck. So
and
we're earning that explicit rating.
Yep, earn that explicit rating. And just so the people, folks at home know, folks that are here know, we're gonna curse. Feel free to curse as much as you deem fit. We all have an X-Chromosome. My name is Bill.
And I'm Noelle.
And we're gonna get some house cleaning done before we explain what this show is gonna be about and get everything started. So, we are on all forms of social media. We have Facebook, we have Instagram, we have Twitter. Instagram basically just has me put memes on it. Twitter, I basically find stuff to put on Instagram. Facebook, Noelle rages, and our associate producer Brian also bombards with various links and things of that nature. Make sure that the news gets out there for people to hear. So, if you go to our website, xchromosomepodcast.com, all of our links to all of our social media, plus all of our blog posts, are on that website. Including things, not just that, including our Patreon. And if you want to make a one-time donation, it's helpful, helps us go through Battle Tech, helps us with everything, and basically makes us give a better show for you.
You know, paywalls are a thing, and we would like to defeat them. There's only so much we can do from the library. We love our library, but, you know, they're only open for so long, and some things are really hard to access from home.
Exactly. Wherever you listen to us, if you're listening to us on a podcasting platform, like, subscribe, rate, review. We do go through, read the feedback if you leave a review, but that helps us with algorithms, which helps us hopefully get more sponsors in the future. We do have sponsors.
Yes, we do. And Bill, would you like to talk about them?
Yeah, the first sponsor is the book Wiser Guys by D.R. Perry. She went through and asked us for do sponsorship with us is because she does have characters within the book that she goes through and gives good LGBTQ characters that people can relate to. This is aimed for young adults, but it's a part of a series that is done like in Prohibition New England.
Oh, that's a cool setting.
Yeah, with like magic and mayhem and various other things going on. So I started reading the book itself. Right now, I will be putting a note onto if it's still available, I'll be putting a note onto the show notes. There are reviewer copies available, so read it, review it, help out our sponsor with this. It's free at this point for the reviewer copy, so help us help our sponsor out with that.
there's never enough queer representation in youth literature. So this is a big deal. This is your chance to make a difference in getting more, making the youth literature scene just that much more queer and giving more kids more representation. As a librarian, those reviews matter so much. So if you can help out, please do.
And second, is going to be from Copper Frog Games. I'm going to be going through and recording with the proprietor of Copper Frog Games. He has basically said, "Here's money to fix your computer, Bill," and
Thank Christ.
and I've taken that money to fix my computer. So during through July and August, we are going to be promoting Copper Frog Games. He has various games going through, but starting in July, he's going to be doing a Kickstarter campaign for one of his new games. So we're going to go through and plug that. I'm going to have him on just to do a brief segue into one of our future episodes, explain what's going on and his game, so we understand what's better for him to explain it than for us to explain it. I'm going to see if I can go through and play test it with him, because he's started putting some of the stuff out, so it should be pretty cool.
Sounds awesome. Now, should we talk about our two awesome special guests?
Well, we are two, possibly three, when our third guest comes on, and it's related related to gaming.
Yeah, and this is a great pride topic, because every time there's something remotely gay in a video game, people flip the fuck out. For example, what was it? Assassin's Creed whatever? Forget. One of the Assassin's Creed old.
Odyssey.
Thank you. Assassin's Creed Odyssey. People are like, but the Greeks weren't gay. And I'm over here laughing. I'm over here laughing in classics major, going, no, they had institutionalized, inappropriate by our standards, gay relationships. So, fuck you. You're wrong. Read a book. In fact, in Rome was so gay.
How gay was Rome?
The Juvenal, writer of the satires, wrote about how exasperated he wrote a satire about how exasperated he was about how gay Rome was, and how men needed to stop wearing fucking girly shit. And if he's complaining about it, it's, meant to be a burlesque. And, this is how our society is. Oh no, everything is terrible. Can we stop being gay? No, we can't.
But gaming is a part of our society. Me and Noel are geek nerds and gamers, and there are so many developers and writers out there that go through that are queer and various other forms of the LGBTQ movement, that because being geeks and nerds, I thought we could go through and have them on to talk about developing, not just for developing for all audience, but mostly how writing from their perspectives as writing and developing from a queer perspective too. So we have two guests. I'm going to introduce the first guest first, because she was the one that gave us which Assassin's Creed it was. We read the letter last week from this writer.
Can you stop dying, Bill? Please, for the love of Christ. While Bill fucking dies, allow me to introduce Cheyenne, the writer and creator of the Llama Me LARP blog. This is you. And
hello.
I suppose we can also introduce our second guest. Are we all talking at once? I don't understand the format here. I don't know what's going on.
And our
hi.
And yes, we can. You came on just in time. We'll go through, and might as well go through. We're going to introduce our we're going to introduce our second guest, who was able to just pull in right in the nick of time. I found them through Renee Ritchie. Renee pointed me to a list of queer writers, developers, illustrators, and things like that. I'm introducing Jabari Weathers, who I saw from an illustrator standpoint with their 7th Sea decks on their website, but they also develop games too.
Yay, cool people. Well, welcome to the show.
Yes, indeed. Thank you. It's good to be here.
And our third guest, some may remember her from Vicarious Identity. When it comes down to a person that I really respect in the industry, and basically as a person, period, I wanted her on my old podcast just for the level of respect that I had, but she's been doing wonders with various LARPs that she helps runs and she's writing. She's has a LARP, Velvet Noir, and does a blog, Space Between Stories, where it has a bunch of basically how to LARP and community aspects of LARPing, which is all deep, great reads. Erica.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Hello.
So,
Hello.
as we mentioned before, this is probably going to be a little bit of chaotic. So, if you're going to talk over each other, feel free to talk over each other. We'll figure out what's going to go on and go through that. But let's just go through and go down a little bit to get to know each of our panelists. I want to start with Cheyenne, because there's one thing I realized when I asked you to be on. I'm a wrestling fan, but I also know what llama-ing is. Llama-ing in LARP is basically you throw up a hand sign to say that somebody is here, so as to let llama me, to basically show that you're there, but you have to like go to the bathroom, go take a smoke break, just leave, but you're actually physically there. But the sign for the llama is the same exact sign as the Too Sweet sign for the Bullet Club in professional wrestling.
You are such a fucking nerd. Oh my god.
Oh man. I did not know this.
If I didn't point that out, my professional wrestling fans that now go through and look and listen to this podcast, because
oh my god, like, do they both look and listen?
We have a couple of professional wrestling fans that look and listen, so they'll be like, "You didn't mention that? That's important." And I was like, "Wait, where all the worlds are colliding, wrestling and LARP and geekery and everything." So I went through your blog and what made you start writing your blog?
So basically ennui with my 9 to 5.
The ennui.
So
That's real.
the ennui is so strong. I couldn't pick a direction to go with writing. I was trying to write like short stories, and I got a little bit done, here and there. I would start a big ass book and give up, and I have like 10 unfinished book ideas sitting in my Word folder right now. And then one day a friend of mine turned to me at a LARP we were in a Facebook message chat. A friend of mine said, and he's gay, and he said, yeah, at LARP, the heteronormativity that's still present there is really, it makes me feel really othered and left out, and like something in my brain just sort of clicked when I read that message. Can feel that. And I was like, holy shit, that's what I can write about. So basically I just wrote it as a way to help nerds who struggle a bit with like asking people about these things and are kind of afraid of sort of backlash is just sort of an educational resource for people. Like, hey, this is a thing that you might do. It's not okay, but this is how you can change that. Or like, here's a healthy way to handle things, because a lot of nerds have social anxiety. So just it's kind of a catch-all. Here's how you be a kinder gamer. Here's how you be a healthier gamer. And then sometimes I have like random rants.
That's
Cheyenne, we're going to have to cross-post or guest post on each other's blogs, because I've been doing very much the same thing, but from a designer point of view. And I look forward to talking to you more.
Yes.
I just wanted to cut in here briefly and say that, since you introduced your blog so well, and that's awesome and desperately needed. And something from the player point of view is really, really important as well. So I can't wait to read.
Which is, I was going to segue into Erica, writing from the developer point of view for similar reasons.
Yeah, this is the second year of my blog, and each year we have a guest post for Pride Month, and all of my blogs revolve around queer gaming. And this year, my first post was how you normalize queerness in games. We don't have to develop worlds that are so heteronormative, but so many people do out of habit, because that's how they grew up. And so it takes a lot of designers and a lot of storytellers to take an extra step to go like, this is a fantasy world. Why is our fantasy world so heteronormative? And it's so easy to develop worlds that can be queer in 10 million different ways. You just actually have to take the extra 5 to 10 minutes while you're working on it to do that. So that was my first post that I wrote this month. And then we've had posts from Rose Jackson this month, who wrote about how to handle non-conforming gender people in your LARP. It was amazing. It taught me so much. And so there's a lot of things that need to be taken into account, and it's really challenging as players and as designers when we've all been raised in the society which has othered all of us. And we're finally, I feel like, at least in Northeastern American LARP, which is where I live and work, we're getting to the point where being queer and LARPing is pretty normal. It's way more queer than most spaces I'm in, and yet our games and our designs aren't actually all that queer, so they're not even reflecting the community in which we are playing. And I think that's because of the way that we have been raised. That's just the way that we started telling stories, and we're told we have to tell stories. So now we really need to take the next step and go, hey, it doesn't have to be a special queer game. We don't have to run Just a Little Loving, which is an amazing queer LARP that tells specifically very hard queer stories about being queer during the AIDS crisis. You can just have queers be normalized in your games.
Yeah.
And this is how you do it. And it's really important that we all start doing that, so we do reflect our community better. So those are my thoughts, and I talk a lot about the blog on it. And the game that I'm specifically designing right now is very normalizing for queer folks in a way that people are like, oh, I thought you just had to be queer to play this LARP. And I'm like, no, it just isn't a big deal if you are. So it's been great, and that's what I do on my blog, and hopefully I'll get a chance to talk a little bit more about the game design later. But honestly, my blog is good for more than just LARPing. A lot of the stuff, especially during our queer months, is any sort of games you are designing. If you are creating something in a creative space, be it board game, tabletop gaming, LARPing, even interactive theater, these are tips and tricks everybody can use in a design space.
I'm going to have to pick some of that up, because I've discovered through random happenstance and chance and luck and a whole bunch of other things that I run a Discord Vampire the Masquerade game, and we all know the roots of VTM is stupid edgelord bullshit.
Oh yeah, it is.
So I take all this stupid edgelord bullshit, and it's V20 stupid edgelord bullshit. So it's slightly better, but the space I've created on my server is gay as fuck. It is so queer, and just everybody creating an environment where it's not a big deal seems to be critical in making it in normalizing it in gaming. We have this ridiculous pair of useless lesbians, and I love them both. The players are queer. Their characters are queer. Everybody is cheering and shipping them, and it's wonderful. And everything is opening and supportive, and
Yes.
all my rules were don't be a dick. Don't use pejoratives.
Really what the rules come down to, and I like what you just said about being queer is just not a big deal, and useless lesbians. A big thing I talk about is in Velvet Noir, which is the game I'm designing, everybody's in gangs, and you're in gangs about minorities, but everybody across the board seems to be pretty queer. And it was really freeing for a lot of our players, because if they were like the token queers in a space, they almost felt like they had to represent all of queer culture for everybody, which means you have to be on your best behavior. You can't just be a person, or you can't play like a shitty person as a character, which is often quite fun, actually. So being able to be queer and also a useless lesbian is a lot more fun, and still, instead of somebody being like, well, you can't show lesbians that way, you have to be respectful. You just want to be like, I am a lesbian. I can be disrespectful to my own person, and sometimes I want to be useless.
It's funny because literally one of them has their Discord tag as
It's useless lesbian.
Amazing.
And it's from that Twitter story about the chicks at the Catholic school, and the one friend tripped, and the other friend screamed at her, "Tiffany, you useless lesbian, go help her!" And it's like, it just, the messy, open, we're just humans with a weird diet and sun allergies, and we are trying to figure out how to exist forever, and everything is awkward. It's just been such a beautiful, messy, very real, organic. I fucked up. I got distracted because girl kind of dumbness. It's great. It's the best stupid story, and it won't stop, and I just refuse to let anybody hurt my precious gay baby. My precious gay babies. They're adorable.
Amazing.
And I want to go through now and bring us talk to Jabari. Now, I found you through a list of queer designers, illustrators, developers that I believe is going around on Medium. Yes,
That's cool. That's
I
how
went
you
through the
found
list.
it.
Like, all right, let me go through, because I had a player writer, I had a developer, I was looking for an illustrator, and I went to the illustration. I'm like, let me contact them, and I contacted you, and you responded, which is great. When I first saw you because of your illustrations page, your portfolio there, because of your 7C decks. I played 7C for the first time this year. It's a great game, and I see through the art that you came through, it shows well. But when I went through recently, when we were trying to get coordinated for your sound check, I noticed that you develop through lunarveil.press. Can you? I really couldn't get much information, but can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, so right now I'm working on the first release that I'm hoping to put out through Lunar Veil Press, and it's an epistolary role-playing game called A Dire Situation. And as far as it pertains to our discussion tonight about diverse gaming and queer gaming, there's a lot of the pre-made scenarios for the game actually are in a setting that I've been working on, which is a city called Folly. And I'm trying to make it a very normalized but very like queer and very expansive space in terms of the representation of gender, as well as like it's a fantasy city. It's basically like the game is essentially Dangerous Liaisons, the role playing game, and the way that so everyone in this city is like very big egos and like intensely flamboyant ambitions and such. And the way that I'm trying to go about handling making that world really inviting for players is by actually normalizing the idea that there aren't like any set binaries gender wise. And even I've been thinking through like what are like fantastic pronouns that could be easily swapped out with any actual pronouns that your table is using, or that also sound good and sound like easy to utilize if you wanted to keep in fiction. So yeah, I'm Lunarvale Press. It's just what I'm planning to put out games under. It's just kind of the name that I'm hoping to put out my designs through, and that's the first thing that I'm working on publicly.
Oh, that's awesome.
What type of bridges or steps do you feel that people should focus on to try to, and I understand don't be a dick is a major issue, but what type of steps do you think that people should focus on to bring a more inviting environment overall into their games for everyone?
I would say pronoun patches are a pretty good, like, visual, obvious, like, normalization method. Like, even if you're cis, it's great if you're wearing a pronoun patch, because that lets non-cis people know, hey, this is a space where it's safe to just wear my pronouns, like, literally on my sleeve. One of the LARPs I'm in, that's a pretty normalized thing, and they have their own branded pronoun patches, for example.
That's cool. And yeah, I like that idea, and I like normalizing pronouns. It's something we're doing one here with this podcast because we want to remember how to pronoun, and I'm doing it on my Discord server just as an out of character. It's who these players are.
Yeah. I think I'm gonna echo in with pronoun patches or pins are very good. We almost introduced them in Damn Wrong, and I was like, no, we're having some issues. We should make them mandatory. And then we had some feedback from the community going, mandatory is also uncomfortable because the non-binary gender folks at that point feel forced to pick a box, even if they can change that box. And there's some other issues. So we've now settled on if you are comfortable, please wear pronoun patches, whether you are gender nonconforming or not. But it is not an obligation to anybody. And the other thing that we really enforce in all of our introductions are anytime you give your name, whether it's out of character or in character, give your pronouns the moment that you give your name, and just make it an open, comfortable thing that we're always talking about pronouns and they could change at any point in time. And that's totally chill. Just make certain you ask if they've changed. And if you are corrected, go back and say, understood, thank you. Use the right pronoun, carry on. Don't be victimized by, oh no, I used the wrong pronoun, I'm the worst person ever. No, it's make it an everyday normalized part of life. There's so much discussion around the pronoun issues that it's important that, yeah, you do everything we can to normalize making certain everybody's using the proper pronouns.
Yeah, that's a good point too about the not turning it into, oh dear, I've misgendered you, I'm horrible. It's like, nah, you just say, oh, sorry, he, and move on.
Yeah, that gets exhausting.
Yeah, like that's
I've lived with roommates that use they them pronouns, and usually at least once they slip up and I'll use misgender, and my immediately response is crap, and then I read gender properly because I'd rather just go crap and get out of the way to know that I made the mistake and move on. It's like saying crap makes me go through and remember it properly. Like for example,
go ahead.
Like for example, right now with the Discord server here, Cheyenne calls themselves genderfuck, and they don't care. So I put all the pronouns on the.
Yep,
so you have taken all the pronouns. There are none for anyone else.
It's mine. It's my rainbow. None for you.
You can take them.
I've also found important things for us to be discussing. I work a lot in historical adjacent gaming or history inspired gaming, and all of history was queer. whether it was Roman or
So
Greek
queer.
All
or
of
the
it.
Wild West or Britain, there have been queer folk everywhere in every period of time. They've been erased by a lot of historians. It doesn't mean that they are there. And so getting all of these articles and doing all this research on the scraps that we know about queer history and just having that accessible to anybody in my historical gaming realm, because that is not an excuse. And I've heard it from so many people that do history adjacent or history reenacting gaming going, well, queerness is for other games. And I'm like, no, my friend, please actually study your history.
No, it's not.
If queer folk have always been here.
Yeah. Also, fuck you. Like, who gives a shit if we're historically accurate about our fucking romances? Get the fuck out of my fucking personal life.
As if romance has a particular historical
Yeah.
axis of accuracy. Yeah, it's absurd that queerness is still treated as such a weird, as an anomaly. It's not anachronistic. It's not something that's new. I think it's really important when trying to make a space feel safe and welcoming to also normalize it by indicating that, like, hey, this aspect of your identity, like, this is for you, and like, this isn't a thing that just sprung up in the last year. Like,
Yeah.
you're
Like, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. It's I try, I suppose, when it comes to like making a space welcoming to like queer players and such, it's, for me, it's a more granular process of laying out really clear safety tools, as well as getting everyone on the same page in terms of how your table identifies the people that are there. And yeah, even having anyone who falls in a societally like normalized scale to participate in that self-identifying process so that it doesn't feel bizarre. I actually had a player in a playtest at a convention this year who was a cis male. And wouldn't, when everyone was giving their pronouns at the table, like, he initially had like refused to actually like just buy in there, but it seemed like out of spite. Like, it was just it seemed very strange. And when we were asking for just pronouns, like, he was just like, no, like listing his name in a combative way, and it just changed the temperature of the entire table. So if I understand the option of being able to like not list your pronouns and like respecting that boundary, but like, don't turn it into something that's combative, because it sours everything.
I understand what you're saying by that. I used to be very much against being called cis until I started hearing more from the LGBT community, because I was like, what, you're labeling me? You don't want to be labeled, but you're labeling me. What the heck? But you have to stop, listen, and learn. And when it was explained to me, no one sat down and explained it to me, but I actually stopped to listen to people around me talking about the issue. Not directed at me, but it's like, the running thing on this podcast is that I am easy mode. I am the cisgender white straight man. I am default gameplay. I have things catered to me because of those issues. One of the things that I have to do, that many of the people like me have to learn how to do, is shut up and listen to your surroundings so you could empathize. I can't speak, with your surroundings. But that also is because of the toxic cultures that we've all been given as men. So it's hard to rewire, but I'm hoping that the person that you had at your table will one day understand why it's important.
And
Yeah,
I think
cross
that
fingers.
the last thing that I want to say about important things to do, the fact that you did learn, Bill, that's one of the most important things of knowing we're going to fuck this up. All of us have been raised in not a very healthy society. Even if you're queer, you will fuck things up. I am very white, and I will definitely fuck things up because I am privileged in that way. And so being dedicated to, I will mess up, please help me get it right. If you have patience with me, I want to understand. That is so important. On the webpage for the company I run, Entropic Endeavors, our main mission statement is Entropic Productions is about failing forward, learning, and growth. We just go right out front and say, we're going to eventually mess this up. We're trying to do some dangerous new things, and we're not all a part of all different societies and cultures. So when we mess up, have some patience with us and please teach us. And we feel honored anytime somebody stops to correct us, stops to be like, hey friend, hold up, you did something that was, not healthy or slightly damaging or not respectful. Because if they're willing to have that conversation with us, that is a gift of honor. That's a gift. That's something saying they are open to this friendship and open to this relationship continuing, and they want to be teachers, and they're doing that emotional labor with us, and that needs to be really respected and honored. So when we do mess up and we learn, being dedicated to quickly apologizing, accepting that critique, and then actually learning, that's so important in all of this narrative.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people are, I guess I would describe it as burnout. Most of the, I would say, white male cis folks I talk to are just kind of leery of talking about the topic at all. But I mean, you killed all the nice gays, so you're left with us. But what I do for Pride Month, I realized that I could start. It hit me that I could make these guides, and the idea is to. I call them quote unquote no judgment guides, where I'm like, exactly how you said, you're gonna fuck it up. It's okay if you don't understand it. Just be respectful. Just you don't even have to understand what's going on. Just be kind. So I just started going down the gigantic list of LGBTQ plus terminology. So I've covered trans, intersex, non-binary, the bis, bigender, biromantic, bisexual. I do three a post. I did agender, aromantic, asexual, and I start them all out with hey, I'm not here to yell at you or be pissy at you. It's cool if you just don't get this, but here's what you need to know about it in a safe environment to just kind of get people who might be very resistant to learning to feel comfortable with change. And once you get them to take that first step, it's like a huge 180 once they realize, oh shit.
I'm 40 and I'm going to be 41 next month. So a lot of this information that's coming through is very new, has to go through processing my brain. And I'm sitting there going, I don't understand 99.9 of this stuff. However, they're being themselves. They're not hurting anybody. So just go with it. And I think that's the best thing that people can do is you're not hurting anybody. I'm here to be able to, I'm going to be do this best as I can to be an ally. I might not understand most of this because I'm not at your level to understand that, but you do you. I have no complaints.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I think one other thing that helps with making at least tables more inviting, more inviting from like a queer perspective for me at least is not when trying to facilitate and acknowledge queer identities at a table, not immediately equating queer identity to sexuality or sexual content strictly, like not fetishizing it.
Oh yeah.
And that means positioning like what place sex has in a narrative and whether it actually belongs in any game that you're playing. And there are some where it totally fits, and there are some tables and people that I will trust with that. But something that I see happen a lot is that when there are queer players or players who are inhabiting queer characters at a table, there's just an assumption that also the content will immediately become sexualized, and that's the direction to kind of pull it in from players who aren't as used to engaging with queer content and queer people, and that can get really uncomfortable and be sort of difficult to prepare for without like front loading like the conversation about what kind of game you want to be playing.
That actually comes out in a good question. To the heteronormatives, so to speak, how would you describe what queer content is?
I have feelings about that. It depends on what kind of queer content you're creating. Like, a good example is, I was talking about Just a Little Oven earlier. That is what I would say is a queer-directed, queer-themed game specifically made to tell queer stories and talk about queer history. It is, for LARPing, in my opinion, the highest level of what queerness is. This is as queer as you get. But most people don't even want that sort of content. We have to deal with like the backlash against being queer every single day in our lives. Do we really want to, on our vacation, go relive the AIDS crisis? I do, but I'm a very strange cathartic LARPer. A lot of queer LARPers don't want to. So the question is, if you're not telling a specifically queer story in a specifically queer game, how are you handling it? And how do you normalize it, which is what we talked about earlier. At that point, if you know that you've got queer players and you have heteronormative players, especially if they've never dealt with queer players before, putting it right up front, going, hey, we've got a lot of different orientations here, but everything here should just be considered normalized. It shouldn't be a topic of discussion that you were queer unless that person specifically brings it up. And depending on what setting and system you're playing in, if your game can specifically normalize queers are as common as being non-queer in this game, it is not a big deal in this space, both in or out of character, that's a good way to introduce it. So the heteronormative players who aren't used to this can just go, oh, it's part of the game rules. Just, people can be queer in this game, so whatever. At that point, it doesn't have to be sexualized, because it's just a part of life. If you're playing a specific game or you are in historical times where you might have those heteronormative players who will be like, oh, there can't be queers in the Wild West. This is, cowboy country. At that point, as a game runner, especially if you know there are queer players at your table, you just up front have the gentle conversation of, we know that the history you've been taught is very whitewashed and very heteronormative. At our table and in our stories, it's okay to be queer, it's okay to be straight in this, but we're not telling a story about that, so please don't make it a big deal. If somebody corrects your pronouns, apologize, use the correct pronoun, and move on. But if you set the rule right up front of, we've got queer folk here, and that's a totally normal, fine thing, and we aren't making a big deal out of it, that's almost, to me, a safety mechanic, and it just lets everybody know what ground they're starting on.
Yeah, I think as long as people are being brutally murdered for being queer, that I think that safety, what do you call it? Preamble is pretty much essential for a safe space for people. Another thing I thought of was especially when you're creating content, it's it's a good idea to avoid, I guess you would call it tokenism. You know, the
Yeah.
whole I am a lesbian and I am a perfect character. I'm like, but that's not realistic. Lesbians are people, like we were saying earlier with the
You mean
useless
like
lesbian joke.
the
Right?
Lesbians
trope
are
of the
valid.
You
magical,
can't.
like the trope of the magical Negro?
Oh god, yeah.
Oh,
Oh
yeah.
That
god,
one's
yeah,
nasty.
that.
yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
god, it's
When
so
I first
bad.
heard that term of the trope, I actually stopped and said, "Wait a second," and then I started thinking about. I started going through and listing various things that I've read through, and like thinking they're not. Then I really sat and stopped to think, and I'm like, yeah.
Oh yeah, it'll fuck you up. It'll really.
Yeah.
Because like one of
Uh-huh.
my for the longest time, one of my favorite books was The Talisman by Stephen King and Peter Straub. And one of the main characters in there is Lester Speedy Parker. And I was like, that's the first thing that popped in my head. I'm like, but he, and then I'm like sitting down, I'm like, it hits you, and it's like you're re-reviewing basically a book from your childhood. One of the things that me and Noel say is that when we were kids, we didn't have young adult fiction. We went from kids fiction to adult books because there was nothing in between.
There was
Um,
not much.
So I basically went from Judy Blume to Stephen King. So it was a shift. But you go through and you start looking at things through different perspectives, and as someone who pretends to be a writer on occasion, I have to watch out specifically for that, because I'm like, you don't want to lean too heavy on one side or too light on the other. You want believable characters without, and I can see how the frustration can come in on that level.
Yeah, I think part of, because this gets into, I guess, like role playing and fictional questions, and like character writing or portraying questions as well. Like part of that is just like, I don't know, someone's identity is like their identity, but in terms of the axes of identity that are equated to queerness, it's generally, I think, with at least with a lot of the subject matter that we encounter in gaming, and that players in general want to usually engage with your with like your everyday games, like having adventures and such, when you're thinking commonly and not diving into like really heavy like provocative LARP, or role playing, like it's kind of a good idea to position queerness as an aspect of a character, and not like the reason why they're a certain way, like, oh, they're inept because they're lesbians. Like the useless lesbians are not useless because they're lesbians. It's because they're useless.
Yeah, it's the
In
you're
other
completely
ways.
helpless and hopeless and flailing. It's the you're the thing it was drawn from was this person is useless because they're a lesbian, and this tiny skirt has flashed a very nice ass at them, and they're stun locked because of this girl's ass. So they cannot move past that. That's a pretty girl moment. But it's not like that. It's the yeah, they're thirsty.
They're
That's
just really
all it
thirsty.
is. It's not. You could say that to a guy. You fucking thirsty cishet dumbass.
Yeah.
What the fuck? You dumb boy. You say the same, and that's the thing.
Yeah, that
about it.
The concept is like seated in a scale of anyone who cares about
Yes.
sex. So yeah.
And just normalizing that in gaming and in spaces is really important, and it's super exciting to have a whole bunch of people who are working on that to talk about and collaborate with live in front of us.
Yeah.
It's super cool.
Absolutely.
And you all come at it from such different perspectives. Like Seventh Seas, tabletop RPG, we have a player blogger, we have a game developer. So we're kind of getting the whole picture, which is something I'm not entirely sure gets addressed in more mainstream venues. I don't consume a lot of gaming blogging because I literally have to sleep sometime.
Yeah.
And if I consumed all of the intersectional feminist literature that I wanted to consume, I would die of exhaustion within a week, simply because there's that much to catch up on. So I don't know.
I'm glad there's that much of it.
I'm kind of white and I'm 40, so I missed some shit.
Yeah.
I gotta backtrack. I gotta get all the way back to like the history of burlesque and then the gayness of history and get through that and then get to the modern era and realize where white people have fucked up literally everything about civil rights.
Everything.
Yeah.
We suck.
Down with white people!
I mean, I would be okay with that. Most white people disgust me, and I'm white. And I come at...
Yeah.
We just have things to learn.
Yes. But...
Oh yeah, I had to explain race face again yesterday.
I noticed a post that you made about race face.
Ooh, that was a rant. That one was a little less filtered than my normal content.
Yeah. I think I heard about you because of that post, and then you emailed us.
Yes.
And I'm like, wait, she's the one that wrote this post.
Yeah, that was me. That was... First I did a rant, and then I did an actual constructive thing about how to not do race face. Like, drow don't need to be black. They should not be black. Drow should be purple, or definitely a light gray. Like, not black. Don't approach black with your gray, even. And then I went on with, like, don't do brown, do green instead for plant people, etc. Blue's a beautiful color. Let's not do red, because that's red face. And don't make yourself look Asian, because that's yellow face. It was just a whole... Here are alternatives to body paint colors.
Yeah.
Which needs to be said because r/LARP on Reddit, for example, was tearing someone up for saying someone was doing blackface. And it was very awkward because the OP was like, no, it's definitely gray. And I'm sitting here thinking, like, I get that it's gray, but it's like really approaching black.
Yeah.
Like, go lighter, maybe? Definitely
there is
go
absolutely
lighter,
a way to wear black body paint
like...
and not fuck this up.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, like, one of them is, like, one of the ways is, like, make sure the reason that you're wearing black body paint has nothing to do with, like, race or lineage, even if it's in a fantasy context. Like, it's, like... Because then immediately, like, that's where that whole discussion will get inevitably pulled and should. Like, it...
Yeah, and they're like, but it's for pretend. It's like, yeah, no, it was for pretend when people were lynching people too. So maybe don't do it.
I feel like this
definitely don't
kind of goes back to another thing to lay out at your table or in your space, which is you don't get to decide if you offended somebody.
Correct.
If a minority or a queer person or anybody from a disenfranchised place says, hey, you messed up, you don't get to say, well, no, I didn't. You have to, it goes beyond, like, failing forward and learning to do better into, like, gently enforcing in your spaces of, if somebody tells you that you messed up, listen to them. And informing your player base that that's kind of a rule. That is what we do here. Oh, and that's another line that I use in a lot of our spaces when somebody's like, well, I did somewhere, and I go, well, we don't do it here. And I just shut a whole lot of hate and uninformed conversation and things down. Well, we don't do that at this table. And if you want to do that, please walk away from this table. So
that's
other
awesome.
tips and tricks to use.
Yeah.
You tell them to shut the fuck up or leave. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big fan of shut the fuck up or leave.
Yeah, we've had kind of a awakening in my design community that I'm personally running of, we can just tell people not to come to our games. We're really trying to make our games a safe space, and they don't have to be like a proven sexual abuser to be banned from the space before they ever show up. If we look at their Facebook, and for Damarung, if we look at somebody's Facebook and they've got anything with white power on there or any right-wing, leanings or Confederate leanings, because Damarung is nominally a Viking game, and those guys love the Vikings, we just say, no, here's your money back. We don't want your business. We can just say that. And it's turning down money, but it makes the space so much safer for so many different people. And we've gotten so many other queer LARPers and black LARPers and people going, oh, this is one of the first gaming spaces that we actually feel safe in, because you're ready to put up or shut up, and you've already banned people just for expressing these points of views, even if they never did anything to actively harm somebody in your space. We're like, well, having those points of views is actually active harm in our space. So you're not welcome here.
Yeah, there was a Noel and Cheyenne do Ren Fair, and there was a recent post that was put onto our page that we're notified of that. I think either Noel or Brian or both of them posted it to our Facebook page about someone trying to pass out things that are showing about white genocide at one of these Viking Ren fairs.
Yeah.
And the proprietors were like, we are not putting up with this shit. If you see this shit, tell us. We're getting rid of it.
It was
that's
just
fucking
hardcore,
bullshit.
and I shrieked for joy.
Well,
I apologize for the background. Air raid siren. That is our void beast Mimikyu demanding her dinner. I don't know if my mic.
Right.
I don't know if my mic is picking it up, but
no, I think we're good.
No, I don't think so.
Heard it for a
She
second.
is loud as fuck.
Yeah, so is my cat. I had to close the door so the cat doesn't have like an anxiety attack. Brian's keeping the cat company, don't worry. But if you don't feed the cat, he's like, meow. And then if you leave the room while he's eating, he also freaks out and is like,
can't eat by myself.
A moment of real hard talk, because it's something we've been talking about in my communities of
bring the hard talk.
Okay, hard talk. Charlottesville, the riots and the white right protesters, they used shield wall tactics, and it only came out very recently that some of them knew shield wall tactics because one of them had been going to Viking reenactment, learned how to use LARP shields, and then taught a bunch of incels and white pride people how to use shield walls. And that's why that fight actually went more vicious and more dangerous and more protective to the protesters, because they used our own fucking tactics against us. And it was confirmed that one of those guys went to LARP events, learned things there, and then taught them. That was the newest thing that I read. And I'm like, I feel sick. Holy fuck. All right, this is why we have to be so vigilant. We can't just be like, well, he didn't hurt anybody in our community, in our space. And that goes for people. Yeah, that goes for Proud Boys, that goes for white pride folk, that goes for people who like TERFs. Anybody who is expressing like an anti-queer agenda, it's dangerous. It is actually dangerous to people. So we have to keep our eyes open. I never wanted to be like, oh yeah, queer gamers are going to be at the front lines of the next Fight the Nazis movement, but then I read that article and I'm like, oh fuck, we are. Okay. Yeah.
By circumstance.
Yeah.
We gotta even watch it at Ren fairs where you're not doing weapons demonstrations. I had a really creepy encounter. It was the year before you came to work with us, Cheyenne. It was
Yeah.
the season before that. This guy comes up to me and he's radiating vampire edgelord. For one, and it's a cloudy and it's a gray day, and I'm delightfully swathed in, being warm because I get cold easy. And he's looming over me, and he reaches out and he almost touches me without my consent. So this is gross anyway. Because this is a gross guy at Ren Fair, and he says, "You have the most lovely Bavarian features."
Oh,
what?
What?
Yes.
No.
So I went and looked it up
What?
because I'm like, I'm Irish and German.
wow.
As far as I know, and half of that has been equated with, from a white supremacy standpoint, Irish people aren't as white as other white people.
Oh, so yeah, this is a whole deep dive.
Yeah. So
Oh gosh.
Yeah, it is.
I
I
think
feel like
about
we're
a
on a
lot.
queer podcast because I have so many feelings too. But yeah, wow.
So I go and I
This
look
is
it up
the
and
safe
it's white
space.
supremacy
Yeah.
bullshit, and I'm like, you're a disgusting human being, and if I ever see you again, I'm going to tell my boss to never let you in the shop again. I haven't seen him; he hasn't come back, but
Yeah.
it was so uncomfortable, and I'm not a targeted demographic except for recruitment, and he picked the wrong sharp-faced bitch to try to sell his bullshit to, because I didn't. I was like, you're weird and you're creepy, and like my body language told my husband, who works with me, and our boss, who is a very large, vaguely Arabic looking guy with a magnificent beard. They just sort of, it's a good beard,
it's
and
a good
sometimes
beard.
he's bald, which is great. So he just looks big and imposing, and they just sort of drift over because my body language says this is an unsettling moment. I might need backup, and they were just right there. But I can't imagine existing in a world that's more uncomfortable than that. Just that alone makes me want to punch white supremacists because I was upset, and I don't want anybody else to feel like that in my space. And I know there are people who feel worse just knowing something like that could happen. And that's why we need intersectional feminism and the crushing of white supremacists. Well, I left words.
Yeah, it's eye-opening when you realize a lot of the norms of either the Western world or imperialism, since it's contaminated most of
Everything.
I guess, like modernized globe. The norms, whether it's like patriarchy or whiteness or like cisgender, or like any of these things, are currencies in and of themselves, and that's where you get the phenomenon of like, oh, these features are more white than these other features. And like it starts, because it becomes this kind of game where, like, if you are marginalized, or even if you're superficially not, how much are you buying into those systems in order to survive as well?
Yeah, survival is a bitch.
Yeah.
Oh, and another thing too is, like, Noelle brought up intersectionality a couple times. It's very important to have intersectionality in the queer community, mainly because white supremacy is itself intersectional, because it's not just white supremacy, it's straight supremacy, like white supremacy, Christian supremacy, all of the normal things that, Nazis would kill you for. It's It's all of that, and so we need to not be exclusionary in our spaces because the Nazis want to kill all of us.
Nazis gotta catch all the supremacies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm gonna call them what
Nazis?
they
Yeah.
are.
I
Yeah.
hate these
Fuck
guys.
them.
Because you're Nazis.
Why are you calling us Nazis? Because you're Nazis. Why are you calling them
They
concentration camps? Because they're fucking concentration camps.
The funniest / saddest about this podcast, it's like, we're gonna be an intersectional feminist podcast. When you say that, you just basically said, we're gonna be talking about everything that is wrong.
Mhm.
Yeah, pretty much. Everything's linked, turns out.
You're here calling ourselves on our bullshit, and that's why we're an intersectional feminist podcast.
Because you have to. That's how you. I won't even say do it right, but that is how we learn. And if you don't have intersectional feminism, and you aren't including queer issues and race issues in your feminism, then you frankly aren't doing it right, and that's why we have TERFs. So.
Yeah, or also the folks who don't want Jewish people as part of the gay community, and you're like, really, bro? Really? We're gonna do this?
Oh.
Yeah, that's how I really feel. That grunt.
Hey, all I know is that I'm listening to everything that's going on while we're just breaking things down. One of these shows I'm going to do in the future is just going to be basically a queer rant rumble with like topic talk and just like drop a grenade and let everything explode. Because as much as we're getting out all the talk about this, I'm just sitting here like, okay, I'm learning. I don't have to do much. I just say, here's a topic. Let me just drop this and run.
Yeah, we're like piranha, we just.
But the thing is, it's like sometimes if you're not doing it to be like, basically if you're not doing it to be a dick, if you go through and actually bring up topics to people and get their reactions, you can learn a lot from the reactions. Like, okay, this is really bad, and based on these reactions, I could tell how bad it is, so I could research on my own, so I can learn.
See, but that takes empathy, which power structures
I can't pronounce, as we found out.
It's true.
But empathy?
Oh, yes.
Empathy? Are we not good with empathy?
Pronouncing it, yes.
I mean, you do cry at literally everything.
There was an incident earlier.
Yeah, I do cry at everything. I just can't say why I cry.
Erica wants to talk about designing.
Oh,
yeah, so I really just want to talk about Velvet Noir for a few minutes, which is my baby and has to do with almost everything we've discussed tonight. Velvet Noir has been nicknamed by our players as Be Gay, Do Crime, the LARP. And it's set in 1928 alternate history America in the city, like the Sin City. It's a disambiguation of New York City and Chicago and Boston all kind of shoved into one. But one of my partners asked me about 7 months ago, what would you design if you wanted to design a game that was all your own? And I'm like, I want it to be a noir, and I want there to be like longing looks and lots of guns and drugs and liquor and hard noir 20s stuff. But I also really we have a lack of minority writers in the LARPing community, and I want to pay my writers. So I'm just going to like go out there and look for as many minority writers that are willing to write about their own cultures in 1920s America and give them money to do that. For that and all the emotional labor that is going to follow with teaching a bunch of white folk and some straight folk about your culture in the 1920s. And then we're going to make a LARP. And we'll see how it works. And we did. And we have learned a remarkable amount of things. The game has normalized queerness because the kind of NPC staff-run family are the queer family. Basically, our setting is all the guys went to the war in 1917 and all the girls got real gay. And the guys came back from the war real gay, and we were all real gay in the early 20s. And then the 20s got darker and prohibition set in and the morality movement set in. and the white men who were fighting for their country came back and tried to retake their spaces that different minorities and the queers had taken over, and what that fight is. And now we're in 1928 and the gangs are losing. So we have a Jewish gang written by Samar Metzler. We have a Latinx game written by Brenna Beatty, or gang. We have a black gang called The Root written by Shaheen Rogers. And then we have an Asian gang written by Victoria Lay. And they literally put the history of their cultures down on paper and said, you can play from our culture. If you are from that culture, you've done enough respectful research. Or if you want to be in our gang, you can play an ally, and you are literally here to learn about our culture and learn how we are being oppressed in a space that we own. And then if you aren't comfortable being a part of any of the cultures, you can play in the culture that I wrote, which are the civilians, which are literally the allies and the people who pass. They're the ones that if they kept their heads down in the city, they would be okay. They could get through this morality movement war. They could get through the Christian morality movement and the white businessmen coming back and taking everything back, but they got to keep their heads down. So if you're a civilian, do you learn how to be an ally? Do you learn how to respect these cultures? And do you sacrifice your own livelihood to support minorities and your own comfort to support them? Or do you survive while a bunch of people you knew die beneath the boots of oppression? And that's the game we designed. And it's really dark. And instead of looking at these issues and going, no, we're a fantasy land where these things don't happen, we said, no, they happen. They're actively happening. Our first event, there was a cop raid. And they raided every single gang's territory, and they shot a bunch of people, and they arrested a bunch of people, and there was a whole ton of cop violence, and everybody pulled their factions together and fought against it and went, hey, we're often warring, but tonight they're coming for all of us. So you sneak people through the Roots Theater, and the Spaka have their own hospital, so you get people to their med center, and we all work together. And when the news of the raids came into the gang, or to the game, all of the gangs closed ranks. They went to their corners and they planned, and it left the civilians and the white folk kind of standing alone in the middle of the room with nobody to support them and nobody even wanting to talk to them. And we had a player named Andrew, who was a getting middle-aged, cis-het presenting white guy, and he's like, that was the first time I ever felt othered in my life. I didn't get it. I've never been in a space that wasn't mine.
That was amazing.
And it was very clearly not my space here. Wow. And I've even had a few players from the minority cultures go, hey, I'm really worried because I'm straight and I'm het, and I don't know if this game is for me, and I'm feeling really weird because it feels like it's not my space. And I went, lean into that feeling. That's how you learn. That's how we felt in every other game in the world. Yeah. This game is specifically designed to other the normal people and to empower the minorities and empower the queers. And I wasn't certain that design would work, but it worked fantastically so far. And it's been terrifying.
That's awesome.
But it's been a real learning experience, and there can be empowerment in facing the awful things that we go through and calling it on the carpet and
I think
empowering people in those situations to fight back in a way that they can't always in their everyday life. So that's my long ramble on what Velvet Noir is.
Mm-hmm.
That's fucking amazing.
No, that's
I'm real proud of it, and I'm proud of our writers. so proud of our writers. They're amazing.
Holy cow. You've basically created like a giant empathy building tool.
Yeah, We're talking about redesigning it in a theatrical context as an allyship teaching tool, basically. So that's a thing for down the line, because I think LARP and theater live at a very interesting intersection nowadays. So one of these days, in the next few years, we got to survive our first year as a game, because it is a campaign LARP. We're going to do this 3 to 4 times a year to people.
Good.
Yeah.
Punch them repeatedly.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
That's
Thanks
awesome.
for letting me ramble on.
Yeah, no, continue.
Yeah, I love.
No,
sorry.
I was just being excited about that. No, please talk about this forever. It's incredible. But you have awesome your stuff too. So talk about your awesome stuff.
Yeah, no, I really love games that are willing to be provocative if they're coming from a place that's supposed to build empathy. One of the other projects that I haven't like widely talked about, but I've actually been working on since art school 5 years ago now, kind of has like really evolved with my understanding of the world as a whole. Since I mean, I'm a Black person that engages in a lot of media and mediums that society, at least at large, on a macro level, tells me is not for me. And so, I've been working on a fantasy RPG that leans into that feeling, and like every single design decision and world building decision for both the fiction and the mechanics lean into having to interrogate every single aspect of your of the space that you take up, and having to weigh everything about the way that you are articulated in that world as a currency. Like that's what everything feels like, and the severe discomfort when you step outside of that, that's coupled with kind of like the cathartic feeling of like that being more true or being more accurate, or being allowed to be more specifically you rather than defined by systems, are the ways that the world is trying to paint you, or at least society is trying to paint you. So yeah, like that Velvet Noir really, like, that sounds very resonant for me. It intersects with a lot of things that I try to do in my design in general. And like I like provoking that kind of discomfort and making a space for people to either feel that, or for people who feel that every day to at least be expert on that. Like it's empowering to be able to like sit down and say like, oh, I know exactly what's happening here, and like now I get to I can guide this table. Because
it definitely happened that way, like. And we had a lot of people going through a lot of stuff after the first event, and a lot of it came from one of our Jewish gamers went, I had no clue how much I needed a Jewish gaming space. And just to sit around with like 5 other of my people and talk about the things we've been through and make jokes that I could make with my family, but I'm not out to my family, or with my rabbi, but I'm not out to them. And here I got to be out and queer and Jewish. And like that was a revelation for this player. And we had a lot of players in the different cultures go, we didn't know how much we wanted our own space. So I'm glad it's there.
Yeah, it's like social deprivation for folks, and then it hits them like, holy shit.
Yep.
I've been so goddamn isolated. And you just feel for them.
Yeah. And it's also really rough when you're seeing someone trying to fit into like the societal definition of what it means to be insert minority here, because that actually is a different mutation of like whatever power structure is in place. Like part of what was so hard for me in gaming spaces and in like sci-fi fantasy, like engaging with sci-fi fantasy, is like a lot of my relatives and a lot of my peers that were also Black were like, why are you into these things like when you're Black, or just like would reject my Blackness and didn't recognize that like I could be Black and into all of these other things, which means that there's actually a script of Blackness that's emerged from whiteness, that pigeonholes the idea of like what you can and can't be if you are a certain color. That happens with any minority group, and it's heartbreaking. Like that's kind of what I've been designing around with the project that I'm alluding to. It's it's going through a lot of reconfiguration because of the exact discussions we're having right now, where I'm like, oh, I want to lean into this more, and and I'm trying to figure out how best to be biting about it while also making an inviting enough game. But yeah, it can be rough. It is rough.
Yeah, but we're learning. That's what we keep just saying. We just keep learning and working on it. But
Yeah. I love that we're all like, oh, by the way, we made games, because the games that are out there just really don't cut it for us on some level.
Yeah.
I think it's awesome. I commissioned art for my eventually I'll do a Kickstarter, hopefully. But for that you need some artwork, obviously. And I commissioned a friend of mine, and I was like, here are the rules. I made sure that none of the fantasy races are like a human skin tone or stereotypically race face shade. And then I also was like, here's the rule for the humans, because I can only like afford one figure portrait each right now because I'm poor as fuck. I was like, here's the rule for the humans. The representative of the human race has to be like definitely a person of color. I do not want the human race's example person to be white. And you can do whatever the hell else you want, like, but they are not white. And that needs to be undeniably obvious in whatever lighting that picture hits that picture. And then as I've been writing the when I reference the players' characters, the whole book uses they them pronouns for reference to any character. It's all they them, and then it can be whatever the fuck you want for reals, but it's all neutral.
Sweet.
But it's gonna be great. There's gonna be furries and airships and all kinds of cool shit. And necromancers. Yeah, like 5 of the 11 clans, and I decided not to call them races. I decided to call them clans to kind of divorce from that terminology.
Yeah.
5 of those are just beast folk. So you can be like a fox person, a rabbit person, a cat person, whatever the fuck you want, really. You can be a giant alligator man who knows kung fu. Like there's no like racial bonuses. The only thing that separates the clans from each other is like their magic affinities that are like innate to them. Which you choose between 2 of them right now. And nothing is like anybody can be anything. Like a mouse could have max strength. And you're just a super buff mouse person. You're like 4 feet tall, but you could bench press like 6 alligators.
Absurd.
Swole mouse.
Swole mouse.
I'm a swouse.
Swouse.
Swole mouse. Swole mouse. How do I get there? Somebody help me get there.
I don't know.
I'm not even drunk, and this is so funny. I am undone. Swole mice.
But yeah, I like that we were all like, yeah, we're just gonna create content that's friendly to us now. Thanks, bye.
Awesome.
It's beautiful.
It's really cool. I nerd a lot about ESO because it's the MMO I play, and it is absolutely fucking amazing how casually gay it is and inclusive.
I feel like that's been like sort of true about Elder Scrolls for
like
a
right
minute.
now in ESO. Well, Elsewhere is out now, and I haven't found quite as much gay because I've been distracted by that. The dragons yell "Fusro die" at you, so I haven't been looking for queerness. You get distracted by dragons. They do that. But the characters, male and female, are all very well rounded and nuanced and subtle and beautiful, fully realized people. In Somerset, there's a quest with a trans woman elf, and the high elves the Altmer are. They're kind of coded to be white supremacists, and by kind of I mean if you squint at them
they totally
just right, in the right light, you'd be like, their outfits could be Hugo Boss circa 1930 something. They're
Love
rigidly hierarchical. They're strict gender roles. Everything is like there's no social freedom except in this one. It's called the House of Revels. In the House of Revels, everyone wears masks so they can be themselves. And baby, what's the name of the quest NPC? Alchemy is the name of the trans NPC, and her sister sends her. Spoilers. This is a quest that is gay and queer. Cope. It's been out for a while. If you haven't done the quest, fuck you. I don't care. Alchemy's sister contacts you to find her brother. And he went into the House of Revels, and I don't know what's going on. He was supposed to be this great mage, blah, blah, blah. And as you go through the quest, you realize that the person who keeps injecting themselves into your investigation is the initial quest giver's sibling. And you have a choice at the end. You can be like, you need to go talk to your fucking sister and you need to sort this out. Or you can be like, y'all can send her a letter later. I'll tell her to fuck off for you if you want me to tell her to fuck off.
That's awesome.
Both of the options are valid. And I had a discussion with my husband about which is the better. Because it's the same damn word. You're not penalized by picking one option or the other. You just get different dialogue about the end of at the end of the quest. And I said, it's not my place. Like I've picked both answers because I've done the quest multiple times and I wanted to just, I'm a content whore and you give me an option. There are some quests where there is only one correct choice, just from an ethics perspective, and you can't, if you pick the other choice, you'll feel gross. And I don't want that from my gaming experience, so I won't take that choice. But in this, I took them both, and they both feel organic and very real because they have he prefers the talk now, but that might be a dude thing. I prefer this is you and you do you. If you don't want to talk about this now with her, that's fine. I'll fucking tank her for you. And you can come at it when you feel ready. He's talking.
All I know is that my moment with role-playing games with that feeling of just feeling like gross or bad or yuck. The only time that I've really has come through any type of role-playing game for me has been Dragon Age, Inquisition, and the Fate of the Chargers.
Oh my god, yeah, there's only one right answer there.
Especially, I basically had to go through and replay my game, start back to that save point, because there is a banter conversation between Cole and Bull about what Krem was thinking during that when you choose to sacrifice the Chargers. And I cry about everything, but I was like, I couldn't play for a good hour. And I went back through every single save point I had just to go back. I'm like, I can't do this. And
I never hesitated. It was like, well, you can sacrifice the Chargers, or you can save these resources and these people that trust you. And I'm like, where is there a choice here? There's only one appropriate decision as somebody with limited resources and limited troops.
Yeah,
they can build another warship.
In my case, it was more the fact of I was trying to go through all the options just to for story perspective to see how everything would go through. But when that banter happened, I couldn't finish the story
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, nope. There's too much nope rope. Nope. And I noped all the way back to that part. I had like at least like 20 saves between then. And I was like, which one is it? I didn't label it Kill the Chargers. And I just couldn't do it. That was my role playing. I can't make this decision ever moment.
That's awesome, though. I go on about boundaries and role playing on my blog a lot. So I am so glad that you knew your own boundaries and listened to them and then made other decisions. More people should do that in role playing.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of boundaries and knowing what is good and respecting that in other people. As somebody who's been a guild leader for a decade now, and then I'm running this Discord server, which on the same rules I run my guild. We're kind of quiet and small now, but we started in EQ2. And it's, don't be a dick. Don't use pejoratives. If you use pejoratives, I will fucking kick you immediately, and I will tell every guild leader that you're gross, and disgusting. And I mean, you can be okay with that, but I'm not. And if you have queer people in your life, you should also not be okay with letting this person be in your guild. They'll be abusive to people. But one of our other rules is it's a critical. When you're MMO RPing, there is nothing to stop people from being ridiculous. There's no mechanics. There's no tools. It's all trust and collaboration and out-of-character communication and mutual respect. My server, my guild, we have a rule called red light. If you are uncomfortable, if something is pushing a trigger, if something doesn't feel right, if you feel pressured, whatever is going on, you have the right, and especially in the Discord game, to call red light, put it in all caps, tag me immediately, tag the staff. And that scene is done until we figure out what's going on and we mitigate and we find the workaround that is respectful to all parties and makes people feel safe. And that should be the number one goal of every gaming group ever, is that emotional safety and physical safety. But, physical safety is a lot easier to sort of define. Emotional safety is that whole, I didn't know I needed a space to be a queer Jewish criminal, and here I am having the time of my life, and it's wonderful, and I feel supported and seen. That emotional safety is something that gets forgotten a lot.
Yep.
And it's very frustrating and important to me, not just because I'm a woman and I present as a woman, and women in gaming spaces are, that's
it's so hard.
That's not a thing that is consistently pleasant.
Oh no, I'm gonna toss a blog up just about that.
Okay, yeah. I worked in a game store. We sold some cheap decorative weapons, but one of them was a cold steel. We sold some cold steel practice things like the baseball bat. Did I know how to swing that bat? Yes.
Yep.
Was there a gladius that I was pretty comfortable with the balance and could defend myself with? Yes, because we were in a mall. I would often be alone, and guys like to try to push. But boy, do they shut the fuck up when you're holding a weapon and what you're doing with it. Because they're just like, oh, it's not a fight. I thought I could. I didn't know I couldn't pick this fight.
Yeah.
And they back down, and it's wonderful, and it's possibly a Ren Fair mentality. We all walk around armed all the time. We've got like a work knife on us. It's no big deal. We need something to cut our food, or a tag, or a piece of string, or what the fuck ever. The scissors, or I mean,
Or
I'll cut a
jugular.
bitch too, but it's just so casual to be armed and to be comfortable defending yourself in that way and being prepared to drop a hand and just change your body posture that says that yes, this thing is sharp and I'll hurt you if I have to. That doesn't exist in like a LARP space because there's all of this lack of understanding that people have a right to exist and be safe and to own their space. And that comes from it starting out as a very cishet male space. Everybody else feels, we talked about othering. Coming into gaming spaces as a woman, as a trauma survivor, I've had 2 abusive relationships. One of them was intensely emotionally abusive. One of them had threats of violence to my person. To walk in a male-dominated space and not because I don't know what all these guys are doing is torture. And I mean, guys, please help us out here.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's just me being a woman. It gets worse when you're not playing slightly more difficult than easy mode.
Yep.
Puzzle adjustment kind of thing. Anyone who's playing a harder difficulty level because they're a minority, anything that increases the difficulty, walking into that gaming space is so difficult, and it shouldn't be. And D&D should be for everyone.
Yeah, we all need to escape this capitalist hellscape.
Yeah. Yes, we do. But it's nice to have conversations like this and know that there's a lot of other people working on it and we're not working on it alone, and have those resources to point at other people when they're
Hell
asking,
yeah.
how do I work on this? Oh, my last note for the heteronormatives in this is pay your minority writers and pay your queer writers and hire a sensitivity reader.
Yeah.
Just do that.
God, yes.
I'm done off the soapbox now.
No, pay your people and hire queer people. They know what the fuck they're talking about.
Yep.
Yep. And also, don't be afraid to take up space for your queer friends, because a lot of us are fucking exhausted.
I physically take up
help.
space for everyone.
And you're a big dude, so I mean,
And I love that.
Like that. I am small and full of rage. It's nice to have a big guy to put out in front so that I can, eat a snack or something.
Well, you need a shield wall, so.
Yeah, but Noelle has like big spirit energy.
And it's the 90% the corset and 10% the me. Promise you.
Yeah.
Yep. In my old college play group, when we used to sit around and play Magic the Gathering till 4 a.m. on Saturday morning, we a friend of mine, Audrey, coined the phrase "spirit dick," and it was basically like nobody fucked with Audrey. She got that big spirit dick energy though. that was just like a niche meme for our play group. Because we were fucking weird. It was great.
We're gamer nerds. That weird is like the baseline. Yeah.
Yeah.
Standard. That's just the standard for humanity. That's
yes.
Humanity is strange. It's just, is that strange, wonderful, or terrible?
Yes, we're all fucking weird, like existentially dreading death, highly evolved primates that are just wondering what the fuck is going on. I suppose highly evolved is a bit generous.
I was saying, I don't know about dreading death, but I see your point.
I mean, at this point, no. I mean, who really dreads death?
I simply wait for the time my list is complete and I can embrace the void. But the list is never done. So
I die a lot in LARPs, so I don't have to think about it in real life.
I mean, losing is sometimes one of the best experiences if it's handled correctly.
Oh, I love it. I'm the person who died at the ball at Magiscola. And they were like, that was cool. A lot of people cried. We don't need to do that again. Like, cool, you told me I could. I'll die dramatically anywhere because losing is fun. And I sustain on player tears.
Yes, player tears are the best. I really try, especially because it's personal horror, the game I'm running. I'm like, please, let's do all these dark things. Let's do the besides the non-binary Nos, who's just a hot mess. One of our Malkavians is autistic, whose life has improved because she died. And she got help for her problems. You know, she lived long enough to get to where she could cope with society instead of, you know, existing in hell forever. We've got, you know, the queer spectrum. We've got people dealing with trauma. We've got people dealing with horrific backstories. One of our characters is, and we love him. He's a sweet, delicate soul who just wants to talk to his plants and do blood magic. He's a Tremere. He's a recovering Hitler youth. He's a recovering Hitler youth. And he can't use Dominate because of what he lived through. He had so much trauma growing up in Nazi Germany that he's got mental blocks that cripple him as a Tremere. And it's beautiful.
Wow.
Yeah, he's like, I can't force people to do things. It makes me very uncomfortable.
Yeah, I don't buy Dominate on PCs myself. Just free will is like a big sticking point for me. I refuse to write compulsion spells into fantasy settings. I refuse to buy up magical powers that are compulsion. I hate it, and I can never explain why. I don't have like personal trauma associated with it. I can't do it.
I mean, because it's coercive, I would assume that's why it's so intensely uncomfortable.
My viewpoint on that is a lot to do with making people do what they are possibly uncomfortable with. The very first, Noelle knows that my character, Dre. My character is her child. It was a part of the art we used to do. That's how me and Noelle basically met.
It's why we have this It's Renee's fault we have this podcast.
Yes, it's Renee's fault that we have this podcast. Even though she won't take the blame, but it's her fault. However, and it's Renee's fault that Jabari's on the podcast too, because if I get the list from her, I would have never met Jabari. So we can thank Renee later. But when I first was playing this character, one of the things with the concept was it was vampire still. It was the new world of darkness. But even as a character that was playing one of the Deva clan, I refused to get presence on my sheet. And people were like, why don't you do this? I'm like, well, I have in-character reasoning for it. Because he doesn't want to manipulate people supernaturally. He will punch you if he needs to. He will run away if he needs to. But I want people to role play their characters. And I don't want the crutch of, you're not doing something I like, let me use this crutch. I want to be able to react naturally to what you're giving me. And mind control and emotion control and things like that was something I was very much against until, and then of course I was living in an area where, we don't know, you're scaring us with your role playing, we must control you, and I started losing faith in my own local game and things like that because people refuse to actually do any type of role playing. But it's more the fact of, I don't want to stifle your creation. However, if your creation is making people uncomfortable in a bad way and not just like a normal role-playing horror way, that's got an OOCN. It's not an IC. It's not an in-character thing. It's you're making people feel like shit on purpose because you're an asshole. You need to go.
Yes.
Yep.
There can be a lot of that.
This has been fun, but there's a lot of information that came through. So, is there anything that you want to plug, promote, let people know about?
Plug your shit. Plug your link. Give us your links. Tell us your projects. Patreon.
All right.
Blah blah blah.
Okay. Yeah, I have I don't do Patreon because they take 3% of your profits, but the blog has a patron subscription thing. You can be any level, any color blue you want that's on there. It goes from blue to azure to cerulean because I don't like silver, gold, bronze stuff. I like blue. Like, I'm obsessed. So my patron levels are like X dollars per month, and they're just shades of blue, and like
Good.
and they exist in like $1, $2, you know, like I'm not here to get rich. Like if I wind up being able to live off this, hell fucking yes, I can make even more content, but you know, and I'm going to get a button for single time donations here as soon as I can. But yeah, if you want to just hit up the blog, and if you like my shit enough to give me a couple bucks a month, fuck yeah, I love you. It's brblamame.com. Make sure you include the BRB because the just lamame.com is like this weird website that I think is being translated from Spanish, and it's about flowers and booking flights, but also like other random stuff like internet, and I don't understand what that is. So yeah, brblamame.com. Tell your transphobic and homophobic friends to read my no judgment guides. And yeah, I'll repost
give us
that
your
link.
fucking link.
I gave you a link. I give you
Erica?
another one though. I got this.
Yes, I am thespacebetweenstories.com. That is my blog. My Patreon is patreon.com/spacebetweenstories. There's no the. I am the lead designer of Velvet Noir. I'm the CEO of Entropic Endeavors, which is producing Velvet Noir. I'm currently designing for Scapegoat LARP in New York City. I'm the workshop organizer for Damarung in Pennsylvania. I'm a storyteller for Dead Legends LARP, and I'm a facilitator for Armistice Arcane done by Peculiar Crossroads. So
I've heard good things about them.
All across the country, doing design and consulting and facilitating, and I work for Scientific American, the magazine. I actually have a day job too. So if you would like to
we're going to need all those links.
Yes, I will put all of those links in there. And I would love your support. And if you ever have any questions, I do work on a consult basis. So if you need a sensitivity reader or you need a brief LARP consultant, reach out to me. My rates are incredibly too reasonable. And thank you for having me.
All right, and Jabari.
Hey, so I'm Jabari Weathers, illustration at jmwillustration.com, and you can follow what hopefully this year will be my more public game design output at lunarveil.press, or just follow me online. On Twitter is probably the best place to find me for games things, and you can follow Goblin Princet. It's Goblin and then Prince with an E-T-E at the end. And,
all right, so I appreciate everybody taking the time out to join us for this. This has been fun.
This has been amazing. You guys are incredible.
I didn't expect this to go as well as it did. However, I am gladly proven wrong. That being said, we are at xchromosomepodcast.com. You can find all of our links to all of our social media, Patreon, everything there. And we don't have any
outro. We're a disaster. But theoretically, I've heard that people love to hear me scream at Craig and tell Craig to get the fuck out. Get out. Go away. Bye. Bye, Craig. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Everybody yell at the bot. Get out. Why is he still here? Fuck. God
Fuck out
damn
of here, Craig.
fuck.